Welcome back to Between Two White Coats, a podcast designed to help you be the healthiest version of yourself. I'm Dr. Michelle Plaster, a family medicine doctor.
And I'm her co-host, Amber Foster, a family nurse practitioner. In our combined 30 years in medicine, we've seen a lot.
We're discussing key issues surrounding health and wellness, answering some of our biggest questions, overcoming health obstacles, and giving patient-centered advice in hopes of educating you and providing the tools you need to live a healthy life.
If you find our podcast helpful, please consider subscribing so you don't miss an episode. And don't forget to leave us a 5-star rating and review. This will help other people find our podcast.
Thanks for joining us. We look forward to serving you.
Welcome. Today we're going to be talking about healthy summer safety. We were talking about summer fun, but we also want to have your summer to be safe. So today we're going to be talking about just some things that we see in practice, and then just one would think would be normal, common knowledge, but sometimes it's not. And so we just want to make sure that we hit some of those high risk.
Yes. I think summer is an important time for us to remind ourselves to be safe, because summer feels like, oh, the work is done. We get a break. And so when we can go on break and maybe go on mental break, we can disengage from staying on top of certain things. Yeah. And so being on vacation, everyone deserves to be on vacation. The parents deserve to be on vacation too, but you still have to be aware of certain things that you need to do to stay safe, or sending your kid off to summer camp, and that you don't want them coming back with third-degree sunburn. Yeah. And so, it's less structured. It's a lot more geared toward relaxing and having fun. And so we don't want to take all of the fun out of summer. We certainly want you to be able to do all of the amazing things, but it's so important that we do them safely so that we can remember that the fun is really the focus, and we keep certain things in mind. So there's just a few things that we want to put front of mind for you so that you can enjoy and have a safe and fun summer. So what comes to mind for you as important things to keep in mind as we move into the summer?
Well, when you said third-degree burns, so I have a son that has red hair.
Yeah.
And so sunscreen is like the top of our list for summer. So they typically go to a camp, and it's usually a week-long camp. I'm not there. And on the camp form, you have to fill out, like, what are your expectations? And when he was little, I would put that he returns home alive. Like, that's what I put. And that he does not come home sunburnt, because he was like a 7 or 8 year old boy not paying attention. And even though I would lather him a million times over, he would always get burnt. It just it doesn't matter.
Well, and you drop them in the morning, so you lather them before they leave, and then they have a good 6
swim.
They jump into whatever water. The sunscreen's gone.
Yeah.
We must reapply.
Yes.
And my son, my husband's black, my son's biracial, and so he will remind me, "Mommy, I don't have to do as much sunscreen. I have melanin." And I'm like, "No, buddy, that's not how that works. Yes. You have to do as much sunscreen." So we have to remember that certain pigments, you have to be so careful.
Yeah.
But everybody needs sunscreen.
Yes.
And so let's talk about sunscreen. What do you need to know? What sunscreen should you buy? Yeah. You want to get sunscreen that covers for both UVA and UVB, because you can get harm to your skin from both types of sunlight. You want to get sunscreen that is 30 plus. And so it gets very confusing. What does the SPF mean? And is SPF 8 okay? SPF 30 is really what's going to block sunscreen. There's questions about what does SPF mean, and it's not how long you can be in the sun. Yeah. There's no way they would be able to test something for how long you can be in the sun, because the sun at 7 a.m. is not the same as the sun at noon.
And John Rett versus Cole
are
a little different.
Totally different.
Yeah.
So, how long can my son be without a sunburn versus your son with red hair? So there is no way to really say this is how long you can be in the sun. But there are certain things you want to remember. So if you put on an SPF 30, you're going to get much more protection. The way that they look at the SPF is to apply it and compare with someone who has no sunscreen, how much protection is there from the sun. And so the higher the number, the more protection. And so go with more protection. There's a lot of question and controversy if SPF over 50 really means any more. And I think as this boils down, it's about 97% protection when you're getting near 50. So it's, how much more is it? 99, 99.6, 99.8. But you really just, want to get the higher number and make sure you get good protection. And in choosing that kind of sunscreen with kids, lots of times, especially babies, are sensitive to the chemicals that will create that barrier to
babies. You have to wait until children are 6 months to use sunscreen. So otherwise, if you have a baby like less than 6 months, you should not use sunscreen.
Because their skin's just going to be too sensitive.
So you've got to use like the cute little hats and the little swim shirts,
and keeping them in the shade.
Yeah, in the shade.
And babies also can overheat faster. So having them out in the sun, their surface area is more than as they grow. And so they can overheat faster. So you want to keep babies in the shade, and you want to have them covered, hats, long sleeves, those types of things. If they're in the water, and you're, protecting them up in the water, don't have them in there for a long time. Go get them to shade. And then after 6 months, you still may want to avoid some of the harsh chemicals of sunscreens, and do barrier screens like zinc oxides, the things that when you rub them on, they leave sort of a white barrier, and that's going to help protect from sunburn. And then when you move on to sunscreen lotions versus sprays, if it says all of this, for something to have an SPF, the FDA is regulating it. So it's not like other skin creams. For it to say SPF 30, it must have met the same stringent criteria as any other SPF 30. So SPF 30 spray should be equally protectant to SPF 30 lotion.
Unless you're my kids and you're squirming, and I'm like, please stop.
Yes.
So it's all application too.
It is all application. So I personally do not use the spray because
they're like this.
Yes, I don't use it on myself. I don't use it on my son. One thing you do have to remember is that the sprays, when they're aerosolized, you don't want to breathe that in. That can cause damage to your lungs. And so don't spray people's faces. Spray it on hands and then rub it on faces. But to use the spray, you're supposed to be a certain distance, very close. You're supposed to spray until they glisten, whatever that means. Spray
like,
until they
cold.
glisten.
It's freezing.
Yes, and they're running and they're trying to get in the water. And then you're supposed to rub it in, because the issue with the spray release, you can miss spots. If you're out further and they're moving around, you can miss spots. So you're supposed to spray and then rub to make sure that you get good coverage. I think that the issue with the spray is not that it's inferior, but that it may be applied in an inferior way. You're supposed to put your sunscreen on 20 to 30 minutes before getting sun exposed. Let it soak in, let those chemicals start to create that barrier. I've started putting my sunscreen in the bathroom. And so if I'm going to go to the pool or going out to the beach, when I'm putting my swimsuit on, I put my sunscreen on. And so I've got a really good, and I find that in the well-lit bathroom, when I don't have sand on my feet or other things, I'm applying much more thoroughly.
Yes.
I was sort of known for like the weird flip-flop marks on my foot because I put sunscreen everywhere except for one foot.
Yeah.
And so I do much better if I do it in the bathroom. But also remember, you're supposed to reapply your sunscreen. The sunscreen does not last 8 hours. And so you are supposed to reapply every couple hours, and you're supposed to reapply any time that you've gotten into water or potentially rinsed it off. The best sunscreen is really the one that you're going to use or that your kids are going to use. And so I typically will try to use the lotion before I leave the house, get all of the areas as good as possible. And then when we're out at the pool or the beach, we kind of default then to the spray because it's faster, it's easier. I kind of try to get dry, and then I'm more likely to reapply with the spray. And I'm pretty bad about reapplying. I think, I do a good job of putting it on the first time, and then I forget. But I will also say, my mother passed away from aggressive melanoma, and that really changed things for me on recognizing the importance of protecting ourselves from the sun. And melanoma being a potentially genetic cancer, I try to be much more careful. And so since I'm not great at reapplying, I have really invested in getting a cute rash guard shirt that matches my swimsuit. And so I have a big hat, and I wear the rash guard shirt that covers my all the way down to my wrist.
And they have cute ones. I mean, you can
really
be really cute with the rash guard now.
Yes, and so that keeps up to neck covered, and And then, making sure that you sit under an umbrella, you create shade. Those are, and have a good hat. Those are great ways to protect yourself from
Also,
sun as
sunglasses
well.
while you're out there, protection of your eyes.
Yeah, so really bright light can create issues and damage to your eyes over time. And so making sure that you wear sunglasses, it's not just a fashion factor, it actually protects your eyes and your vision. And for those of you who might be vain like Amber and I, it keeps you from squinting as much and getting some of those crow's
wrinkles.
Yeah, a little bit of crow's feet that you might be able to avoid. And so definitely being prepared for the sun and have your sunscreen in all the different bags. Now, one thing I realize is I have last year's sunscreen, and like when
it does expire. Like there's an expiration date on
and so watch for your expiration dates, because if you're anything like me, you don't realize it's 5 years old. But all sunscreen is supposed to be good for 3 years. The FDA regulates it and makes all of the manufacturers say that it will be good for 3 years. So you can use last year's sunscreen. But if you don't see an expiration, or if it was on the box, then write a date on your sunscreen so that if this was a really old bottle, it's not going to offer you any protection, and you'll think you're doing something that's not going to work.
Yeah.
So definitely protect yourself from the sun. Go out, have fun. I love being outside, but sunscreen is my friend.
Well, and if you're outside, hydration is a big deal. You can get out there and before you know it, you're dehydrated because you're sitting out there sweating.
Yes, with the sun comes the heat.
I mean, it can just be like you chilling on the beach, but it also can be activities. So like you might be riding bikes more, or playing volleyball, or whatever you like to do in the sun, and you can get hot and sweaty and get dehydrated. So
we have quite a few cases in the summer where people come in, especially older people, and they tell me that they were in their yard and they got dizzy or lightheaded, and that is a real indication of dehydration. You don't have enough volume, so you're not getting enough volume to your brain. But when people are outside working in their yard and mowing the grass, they're just determined to get it done, and they can overheat. And you might not feel that hot, but you've got to have scheduled water breaks. So stop and drink water. Make sure you're paying attention. Get at least 64 ounces, and if you're going to be active in the heat.
I read a National Institute of Health article that was saying about anywhere from 70 to 90 during the summer ounces, unless you have a contraindication.
Makes perfect sense, yes.
Like with heart failure or something where you can't drink that much. But for the average person, that's a safe amount to be able to drink if and when you're active outside in the heat.
Because we're really saying like 64 ounces should be your baseline. So if you're sweating out more, you need to have more. Yeah. So hydration, sunscreen. What else do we need to remember?
Particularly water safety, as I see, and you do too, but I see a lot of the pediatric patients here in the clinic, and I always ask if children know how to swim. The number one answer is always yes, which then the mom or dad looks at the child and is like, no, they cannot swim without floaties. So kids tend to be very confident around water. So
and intrigued by water. It looks fun. Like fun. Yeah.
And so water safety is a huge deal. It's something that I talk about at every wellness visit. Even if your wellness visit's at Christmas time, I will be saying, do you know how to swim? It is such a huge deal to know how to swim and to at least be able to save yourself, like at least be able to tread water. And there's so many people, not just pediatric patients, but even adult patients that like they didn't have access to water, or they didn't swim for various reasons, and they don't know how to swim. And so that's a huge thing for me. It is water safety and being able to swim.
When I looked up the statistics on this, it was so alarming. The number one cause of death in children ages 1 to 4 is drowning, and the number 2 cause of accidental death in children under 14. So really, if we could prevent kids from drowning, it would be so impactful. And what a just horrible, it feels preventable. But please, if your children cannot swim, get them swim lessons. I saw on our local news, this woman in Atlanta has started something called Swim School, SWEM, and you can find that online. And these are free swim classes made available so that anyone of any age who can't swim can learn how to swim. Water can be very scary and intimidating as you're older and you don't swim, but this is something you can learn. So we strongly encourage everybody to learn how to swim, and make sure that your kids are in swim lessons so that they can at least get themselves safely to the side.
And I know like the puddle jumpers, like the quote unquote life jackets, yes, those are great, but those are also not safe. I mean, they're safe, but they are not true safety devices. Like if a
Yes.
child were to go forward and they were not strong enough to pull themselves back up, then they still could
so
drown.
if they can be face down in the water
Yeah.
and can't get themselves rolled over, and some of those that are really big and bulky right around the chest, a kid cannot get themselves turned over in those.
So like just because you've got your child in a puddle jumper does not mean that it is safe for them to run around. Like I am a nervous wrecker on a pool. We have a pool. My children know how to swim. My children at this time are 13 and 15. I will not let them at 13 and 15 get in our pool without an adult present. Period. And they're like, Mom,
things can go wrong.
I don't care.
Yes.
I'll tell them to tell their therapist when they grow up. It's fine. I don't care. Because it is just such a huge deal. So,
and I think you bring up that false sense of confidence when you have a kid who's a decent swimmer. My son's on a swim team. He does all the strokes. Swimming is his sport. And I don't let him in the ocean go out beyond his knees, and otherwise we have to be with him, because those riptides, you hear about strong adult men who get pulled out and drowned. And so you just, when there's current, you can't be too careful.
Yeah. And so I know this sounds very, very basic, but just watching your children, not that I'm blaming anyone of being a bad parent, because I have been there with the kids.
Absolutely.
But making sure you're watching your kids. We had a football party. My kids, I've always been involved in sports, and we had a rec team come, and I asked all the children and their parents, do you know how to swim? Do you know how to swim? They all told me yes, which I figured was probably not the truth. So I literally sat on the side of the pool watching, and I could see this one kid, and he was walking because I knew he didn't know how to swim. And so, like the dip that goes down, and he went down, and I could see panic. So I jumped in and got him, and he was like, you saved my life, Miss Amber. And I was like, don't you ever go past this point again.
Yeah. But because the panic kicks in too.
The panic kicks in.
And so, even sometimes when kids can put their feet down, when the panic kicks in, it doesn't occur to.
So just making sure that you're paying attention. I love to read. I love to sit at the pool and read. It's one of my favorite things to do. But if my kids or other children are near me, I'm like a lifeguard.
We have to be. We have to be. And when we're talking about water, we have to remember boat safety is very different. Lots of times people like to get on the boat, have some drinks, have a lake day. So if you're gonna jump off of a boat, have a life jacket on. Lots of things are unpredictable when you're jumping into murky lake water, and we've heard way too many stories of people who have jumped into lake water and something happened and no one figured out why the person didn't come back up. Have a life jacket on. And especially if people have had a few drinks and they're out at the lake, have a life jacket on when you're getting into the water. Have a life jacket on while you're cruising around. It's, it may not feel like the most fun thing, but it sure does save people's lives. And so just water safety in general, being smart when you're around the water. Unfortunately, the water takes a lot of lives, and we don't want to look back and wish that we had done these things. Other summertime safety, summertime fun, we've talked about hydration and water safety and protecting ourselves from the sun. With the sun comes heat, and so we also have to be careful in the car. And remembering that cars heat up ridiculously fast. And so if you're running in somewhere for a short time, leaving a pet or a child in the car in heat, never. It's never okay, and you don't want to experiment with how fast your car will heat up. It's faster than you think. And then also we get distracted, and unfortunately we hear about the stories of kids who are left in cars in their car seats, and so there are alarms for that. We always think it's not going to be us, but I would rather be prepared and never need it than to have needed it and not had it. So you may want to invest in one of these alarms for your car seat so you can have extra safety to make sure that you don't accidentally leave a little one in a car seat.
When I get in my own vehicle, it's hot, and so car seats, a lot of times have metal, and so making sure that those are not hot as well to heat their skin.
So when you hook them in, to make sure that you're not hooking them in and burning them with that. And talking about skin safety, there's a lot more bugs. There's a lot more being outdoors, which is all fun, and bites and tick bites. One of the things that comes with tick bites in many parts of the country now is Lyme's disease and Rocky Mountain spotted fever. And so if you have a tick bite that afterwards you feel some fatigue, low-grade fever, about 80% of people will get a target rash, looks like a bullseye. Not everybody gets the rash, but if you've had a tick and you feel kind of lousy, you need to be tested for that. You need to see your provider. But remembering not everyone realizes when they've had a tick on them. And other bug bites, checking your skin for bug bites, checking your kids' skin because bug bites can get infected and then they're going to need treated. Yes, they itch and that bad things can happen with that.
Helmet safety is a big one for me as when I see the
Absolutely.
kids, which even for adults, my kids are like, Mom, and I still am like, I don't care. If it has wheels, that's the rule when I do for my kids, and that's the rule I tell my patients, is that if it has wheels, if it is a bike, if it is a scooter, if it is roller skates or a skateboard, please wear a helmet.
Yes, and this is what you need to know. It is the short distance down the driveway that tends to create the really big injuries. So it's, it's not okay to be like, well, I'm just going a few feet. That's where you can fall. So it's always the helmet
ATVs
hangs right there with it. And when you get on whatever has wheels, you put your helmet on before you do anything.
And then, of course, I'm like the not fun mom. But even ATVs, those types of things, summertime when people are on them, like you see crazy stuff happen. And you see some horrible accidents.
Golf cart accidents now too. A lot of ATV golf carts, children who shouldn't be driving these things, but they're all out having a blast. You just need to police that and really be careful. Unfortunately, we've seen and heard the stories of when it goes wrong. And so we want you to have a great summer. We want you to enjoy, and we want summer to always be fun and you not have a memory of something, tragic that happened or could have been tragic. So last minute advice for how to stay safe this summer. Use your sunscreen. Make sure you're drinking plenty of water. Be safe when you're near water. Wear your helmets. And most importantly, have a great summer. We like to leave you on a good note. So here's today's Tell Me Something Good. Something good is old friends. People who we have been able to call friend for a long time. These people we have a history with, they know us in so many different times and space. And when we get together with old friends, it just allows us to be our genuine self. So reach out to one of those old friends today and make sure that you're putting some energy into those old friendships. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, take care of yourself.